GM has got an exciting plan. They've got a $35,000 Chevy Equinox with 319 miles of range. But how on earth could you do it? How could you make it happen? We've got a few theories and we're happy to share them. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. I'm joined this week by my good friend Randy Kirk, freshly back from all the vacationing. He got a chance to see New England, which is, a lot newer than Old England, I suppose. Welcome back, Randy.
It's great to be back. I do love travel, but, once in a while, it's good to get back to the homestead.
Isn't it? So, we've got this GM, the Chevy Equinox, 35 grand. Before we get into the article, my question to you is, how do you do it? How can you make an EV cheaper? Give me some known, tested ideas.
Tested ideas. So tested ideas.
Proven ideas.
Proven ideas. Well, so of course you can reduce the amount of battery. You can make a better battery. You can make a less expensive battery. You can change the battery chemistry in order to be able to have less power but more range. You could pretty much, outside of reducing the quality of the interior, the quality of the body, the quality of the paint. I mean, there's all those things that you could do naturally to any other car. When you're talking about an EV, so much of the expenses in the battery, it almost, you'd think, would come down to you've done something right with regard to the battery if you're going to achieve those prices.
So you said we could put in a smaller or shorter range battery, but 319 miles, it looks like they didn't cut that corner, at least in terms of the initial reviews we're seeing. The fit and finish is competitive. It's fine. I guess another way would be economies of scale, which they have not achieved yet.
They could plan for that and plan to lose $100,000 a car for the first 50,000 vehicles or something.
Aha.
Because
isn't that what you do? You could simplify manufacturing, and we know a bunch of ways to do that, but we haven't seen them do that. We do not see evidence that these are employing gigacastings or a structural battery pack. They don't have a special partnership with a battery manufacturer that would get them below industry average pricing. So maybe that's the plan, is that they're just losing money. So let's take a look at this here. How GM made the $35,000 Chevy Equinox into a car that's the cheapest way to get over 300 miles, thanks to Ultium scale for that. Okay. Do you want to field that one? Ultium scale?
Yeah, I have no clue. I mean,
if they had scale, you would know.
Right. I mean, there's just...
we had a scale, but we put the Hummer on it and it's broken. Forget the $100,000 spaceships. I wonder who they're taking a poke
No
at
kidding.
there.
Yes.
What the world needs now is affordable electric cars. I agree. After plenty of setbacks on the electric front, GM thinks it's found its secret sauce on the now on sale 2024 Equinox. So the crossover boasts 319 miles of range in front-wheel drive, which starts at $43,000 before the incentive. And then later this year, the actual $35,000 one comes out. So I think we may have found the two ways that they're doing it. First is by losing an unknown and unknowable amount of money. And second is by not releasing the car.
Yes.
It's not for sale.
Yeah.
So that's not ideal. In other words, GM unveiled the cheapest way to get more than 300 miles, since it'll be in the mid-30s after tax credits. And by the way, are these batteries made domestically? We should look into that. It's possible, I guess, with the low volume they have. I don't know how they would scale this to enjoy those economies of scale needed to save them to get their prices under control. Any thoughts on that?
Well, they've been promising, I mean, they do have some battery manufacturing capability. I can't come up with the exact situation in my head right now, whether they own it outright, whether they have a partnership or not. But I know, they've been making those batteries for a while, one way or the other. And they were domestic. And they kept talking about how they were going to be better than anybody else's batteries, but we haven't really seen that. Did we get in? I'm not sure where you're going with this, whether you're going to get into some of the other specs, like 0 to 60, and how long they're going to guarantee the battery and whatnot?
So the federal law is minimum 8-year, 100,000 mile. I
Okay.
imagine it'll be exactly that. Why go longer when you
Right.
don't need to? What I'm seeing here says that battery materials will be supplied by LG Chem and POSCO Chemical, and that in China they're using NMC chemistry manufactured by CATL. So it looks like the Ultium may actually be made in the US.
Okay.
I hope that they're able to scale it. I will believe it when I see it.
Now,
because
one thing they might be doing, and this is what I would be doing. Okay, if it was my situation, I would be finding one battery company right now who's suffering the most. Maybe that's LG. Who's suffering the most? We know they're all suffering. They're running at 60% capacity. They've lowered their prices and lowered their prices. There's no way they can sell all that they can make. So I'd be shopping around who is really hurting the most in terms of their U.S. capabilities. And then I would say, okay, I'm going to buy up. And maybe they got to make a real deal this time. They got to put the money on the line. And maybe they've been able to really, really buy a bunch of U.S. batteries at a really good price.
there was the partnership that Ford had. The name of the company is escaping me now. I would imagine their U.S. operations are hurting because they went all in on Ford, and
Right.
Ford has not gone all in on them.
Right.
So that would be a possibility, but it takes time to engineer these things and to get them working right. So the Equinox will still have a lot in common. So GM is luckily able to use their parts bin to keep some costs down. It's going to have the same blinkers as every other car. It's going to have the same seat belts as other cars. That's going to introduce some savings, but it won't get them down to $35,000 on this car. This is too much car for $35,000. They're right. It's a very good deal. And I hope buyers are snapping it up, because especially if you qualify for the federal incentive, let
Right.
alone any state incentive on top of it. I mean, $28,000 for that. That's a lot
Yeah.
of car for the price.
Yeah.
I just don't see any way that it's possible. That number is too low. Yeah, it shares components with the cars, including steering wheels, Android Auto, and of course, the Ultium battery in the floor. This is a misunderstanding, I think. Ultium is more of a philosophy than an actual battery, because you need it to be able to handle different sizes. There's this ongoing debate between people who are capable of rational thought and people who invest in NEO, who the NEO people think battery swap is the cat's meow. It is the end all be all. And I said, even from the perspective of the shape, it's inadequate. Because if Tesla had adopted this approach with the S and X, it would have worked great. But then you've got the Model 3 and Y come along. You're like, darn it, the battery we tethered ourselves to is too wide and too long to fit in these cars. Okay, fine. We'll switch all cars to the types of batteries we put in the 3 and Y. Well, now the S and X don't have the range that they could have, and the Cybertruck has hardly any range at all, because you're trying to hold the thing together with a Model 3 battery. That makes no sense. And the videos we saw of the Ultium presentation said, it's great because it's configurable in any number of ways. We can have a double stack, a single stack, one with a tall penthouse at the back, or we can put the modules sideways instead. It's a philosophy more than an actual product. Very silly. So let's look here. It's one thing when you purchase in low volumes, your costs tend to go up quite a bit, as well as your development costs. But once you start to scale that across many cars in the family, disagree. Right? The
Yes.
economies
Yes.
of scale,
Right.
like you were saying, the big cost is right here in the floor. The big
Yeah.
cost is not the wheels. No one is trying to get, hey, I'm going to build this new car. Could you reduce my cost of wheels by $40,000?
Yeah. Right.
No, because they don't cost that much. So I think this is a pretty rose-colored perspective on this prospect. The modular battery packs are designed to have energies ranging from 50 to 200 kilowatt hours to over 200 kilowatt hours. And it can be front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive. Okay. Yeah, that scalable platform turned into a nightmare last year. So what are we thinking? How long is this car going to last? at this price?
Yeah. So again, without seeing the rest of the specs, I mean, you and I both know, I'm sure most of the people listening to the show know that battery chemistry is huge in terms of the cost of the battery. And the battery chemistries right now are all over the place. I mean, there's so many new battery chemistries coming along, but there's trade-offs. So how long do you want the car to last? Do you want to be able to charge to 100%? What do you want your 0-60 to be? How do you want it to be able to perform, in different circumstances and cold and heat, etc. I mean, there's so many things that these battery chemistry, how fast do you want it to charge at the charging station? So are they only zeroing in on range, which certainly would be I guess, a fairly smart thing for a Chevy or for a Ford to do, because people have range anxiety with regard to those cars. So if you say, okay, I'm just going to go all in on range and not worry about
I think that's a reasonable approach, though. As long as these cars have better acceleration than the last Chevy their customers bought, it's going to feel exciting. And I had a coworker once who said, "Hey, I need to go get a new laptop. What is the best laptop?" I said, "The best." For what? Well, just the best. I'm like, right. For what? So she's, to heck with you. So she comes back with the most expensive laptop. This was in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this weird modular Sony laptop with all different kinds. You remember those?
Oh, my partner bought one. Yeah.
And it was thousands of dollars in the 25 years ago. And all of us looked at it and were like, that is the weirdest. She's like, no, but it's the best. and we again said, the best for what? It doesn't have the biggest hard drive or the fastest processor. It's weirdly portable, but I think you're right on all those things. There was a video I've made, I don't think it's come out yet, where I was talking about how there's this new miracle battery from CATL. And this one is a very good battery, but the article doesn't understand what batteries are. It said, well, you can do this much, you can charge this many miles in 10 minutes, right? On what size pack?
Right.
And at what performance, at what temperature, at what voltage? I mean, there are too many questions. And at that point, you're no longer asking the right question. I did want to point out, this is a real statement on this interior here. It is, boy, I'm going to just say that is probably not my jam.
Yeah.
It's probably not for me.
Yeah.
But hey, what do I know?
So Brian, I will just say my last thought, or maybe not my last thought, but my last thought for this minute on the subject. We would go back to the conversation you and I had, I don't know, months and months and months ago, that technically Tesla could be for a battery made in the United States, Tesla could be very close to zero cost after you take the government incentive. You could maybe make a battery that would go 310 miles for $45. And you get a $45 incentive for the government, you got a zero cost. Well, if you got zero cost for the battery, getting to $35,000 on a vehicle is not that hard.
Yes, if the battery, regardless of size, becomes free, every car becomes a long range.
Yeah.
As long as you have the capacity to make them, just make them all long range.
And variations on that too. If it's $2,000 instead of $10,000, that's going to dramatically impact the retail that you can go out at. Now, having said all of that, you still need scale. Even if it was zero, you still need scale to be able to get to that 35,000. Whether or not that vehicle is going to give them that scale, that is a much bigger question.
Much bigger question. And it is the question for you guys in the comments, is 35,000 something that an American manufacturer can actually offer in a 5-seat crossover SUV? Is how much money, I guess that's a better question in the comments, how much money is GM losing on each and every one of these these new vehicles. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You guys, thank you so much for your decision to support the channel on Patreon, on YouTube as a channel member, on X as a subscriber. It means the world to me. It's how I'm able to get out and do all these fun things and borrow Jan's studio here. I want to thank Randy Kirk from the Randy Kirk channel for joining us. Yeah, it was great seeing you back at your home all these weeks on the road. I was starting to worry about you.
This is real. See, my arm doesn't disappear. See, my arm isn't disappearing.
Your hair isn't glowing. Everybody else, like, subscribe, smack your thumbs, whatever you must do. But stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots on the next one.